Hey everyone, welcome back to the realm. I'll be your guide beyond Waking Realm. Today, we're diving into the meaning behind NieR, the one and only. There are some characters who change because they learn the truth. There are others who change because the truth arrives too late. And then there's NieR, a boy who begins his journey with one simple wish: to save his sister. Not to save the world, not to understand the grand design behind the suffering around him, just to save Yonah. In many stories, that kind of love would be treated as pure, noble, unquestionable, but NieR Replicant does something far more painful with it. It asks, what happens when love becomes obsession? What happens when devotion becomes blindness? What happens when the person we are trying to save becomes the reason we are willing to destroy everything else? Because NieR is not evil. This is what makes him tragic. He is kind, he is loyal, he is protective, he is determined. He is the kind of person who will help strangers, defend the weak, and throw himself into danger without hesitation. But he is also the kind of person who, when given the choice between the world and Yonah, was never truly making a choice at all. For NieR, there was only ever Yonah, and that is where his story begins. Not as a warrior, not as a legend, but as a brother. A young boy standing in the ruins of a dying world, protecting the only family he has left. In the opening of NieR Replicant, we see NieR and Yonah in a broken, snow-covered city. It is cold, empty, and hopeless. The world already feels like it has ended, and yet, even there, NieR is still trying. He is still shielding Yonah, still searching for food, still fighting off the shades that threatens them, and then he touches the book, Grimoire Noir. That moment is important because it is the first sign of the pattern that will define NieR's entire life. When Yonah is in danger, NieR does not hesitate. He does not stop to understand the consequences. He does not ask what the power is. He does not ask what it will cost him. He only knows that Yonah needs him. So he takes the power, and that is NieR in his purest form. A boy who will reach for anything, fight anything, and become anything if it means keeping Yonah alive. Then the story shifts forward, and when we meet NieR in the village, this version of NieR is still young, but the world around him is smaller, softer, and more human. He works odd jobs. He helps the villagers. He takes care of Yonah. He tries to provide for her in a world that gives them very little. And this is where NieR Replicant quietly builds the heart of his character. NieR is not driven by ambition. He is driven by responsibility. Yonah is sick. She has a black scrawl, a disease that no one seems able to cure, and because of that, NieR's childhood is not really a childhood. It is labor, it is caretaking, it is fear, it is love under pressure. He is young, but he already carries himself like someone who cannot afford to be young. Every errand matters because it might help Yonah. Every coin matters because it might buy medicine. Every danger is worth facing because doing nothing is worse. And that is why his kindness is so complicated. Because NieR does not help people, he does care. He does take on burdens that are not his own. But underneath almost everything he does, there is this deeper emotional gravity pulling back to Yonah. She is home. She is his home. She is his purpose. She is the reason he keeps moving. In the first half of the story, that love still feels innocent. It is desperate, yes, but it still feels like the love of a boy who believes that if he just tries hard enough, he can make things right. Then he meets Grimoire Weiss. Weiss gives NieR power, but he also gives him direction. Suddenly, the impossible begins to look possible. There may be a way to cure Yonah. There may be a path forward. There may be hope. And once NieR sees even a glimpse of hope, he chases it with everything he has. Along the way, he meets Kainé and Emil, and this is where we see another side of him. NieR does not only love Yonah, he is capable of seeing pain in others. Kainé is feared, rejected, and treated like a monster by the world around her. Emil is gentle, lonely, and cursed, with a power he never asked for. Both of them carry wounds that isolate them from others, and NieR accepts them. That matters. Because NieR's love is not fake. His compassion is not an act. He genuinely becomes a light in the lives of people who has been abandoned by almost everyone else. To Kainé, he becomes someone who sees her humanity. To Emil, he becomes someone who makes him feel less alone. To Yonah, he is everything. And for a while, the party almost feels like a found family. A strange, broken, beautiful little group, trying to push back against a broken world. But NieR Replicant is not a story where love saves everyone cleanly. It is a story where love and violence walk side by side. Because every step NieR takes towards saving Yonah also takes him deeper into a war he does not understand. The Shades are presented as monsters. They attack. They kill. They appear as threats, so NieR fights them, and at first we understand why. But the tragedy is that NieR is operating inside a story where he has only been given half the truth. He sees enemies. The player eventually sees victims, and that gap between what NieR knows and what the truth actually is becomes the emotional horror of the entire game. The Yonah is taken by the Shadowlord, and when that happens, something in NieR breaks. This is the moment where his greatest fear becomes real. For years, he has fought illness, poverty, danger, and uncertainty, all while trying to keep Yonah safe. And then despite all that effort, she is still taken from him. The one thing he could not allow to happen happens anyway. And then the story jumps forward 5 years. This is where young NieR becomes adult NieR. And the change is immediate. He is stronger, sharper, more hardened. His body has grown, but so has his obsession. The boy once believed he could save Yonah has become a man who has built his entire existence around getting her back. 5 years is a long time to live with guilt. 5 years is a long time to replay one failure. 5 years is a long time to wake up every day and know that the person you love most is still gone. And that is what adult NieR represents. He is not simply the older version of the same character. He is what happens when love is trapped in a grief for too long. And I think this is why adult NieR feels so different. He is not emotionless. He's not cruel by nature. but there is a heaviness to him now. Young NieR still had room for hope. Adult NieR has replaced hope with momentum. Revenge, if some may want to call that. He keeps moving because stopping would mean feeling everything. Stopping would mean admitting how much time has passed. Stopping would mean facing the possibility that Yonah may never come home. So he does not stop. He hunts. He fights. He pushes forward. Because for him, the mission is no longer just about saving Yonah. It's about making those 5 years mean something. It's about proving that he did not fail her forever. And that's where his tragedy deepens. Because the more NieR suffers, the more certain he becomes. And certainty can be dangerous. Especially when the world is begging you to question what are you doing? And what you are doing. Adult NieR's journey is filled with signs that things are not as simple as they appear. The shades are not mindless in a way he wants them to be. There are emotions there, connections, families, fear, grief. But NieR cannot afford to see that. Not because he is stupid, because seeing it would threaten the one thing keeping him alive. If shades are people, then what has he been doing? If the enemy has a soul, then what does that make him? If saving Yonah requires the destruction of others who also love, suffer, and cling to life, then is his mission still righteous? These are the questions NieR avoids, not always consciously, but emotionally, because the truth would slow him down. And NieR cannot slow down. He has to reach Yonah. That is why the Shadowlord is such a powerful mirror to him. At first, the Shadowlord feels like the villain. He takes Yonah. He commands shades. He stands at the center of NieR's suffering. But by the end, the horrifying truth is that the Shadowlord is not some distant evil. He is NieR. Not symbolically only, but directly. He is the original Gestalt connected to NieR's replicant's body. He is another version of the same person, driven by the same love, reaching for the same sister. The Shadowlord is not NieR's opposite. He is NieR without the illusion that his actions are heroic. And that changes everything. Because both of them are fighting for Yonah. Both of them have lost too much. Both of them believe they are doing what must be done. The difference is not love versus evil. The difference is perspective. To NieR, the Shadowlord is the monster who stole his sister. To the Shadowlord, NieR is a copy standing in his way of restoring his Yonah. And that is the cruel genius of NieR Replicant. It makes the protagonist and antagonist reflections of the same wound. A brother who cannot let go. A brother who will sacrifice anything. A brother who has decided that Yonah matters more than the world. And this is where the story becomes uncomfortable, because most of us understand NieR emotionally before we judge him morally. If someone you loved was taken from you, would you calmly stop and consider the structure of reality? Would you pause and ask whether the creatures attacking you might have their own history? Would you be able to accept that saving the person you love might doom people you will never meet? Maybe we would like to think so. But NieR Replicant challenges that idea, because NieR is not written as someone outside of human emotion. He is written painfully close to it. He is love when love becomes tunnel vision. He is grief when grief becomes violence. He is devotion when devotion stops asking questions. And that is why his story hurts, because we are not watching a villain fall. We're watching a good person move forward with incomplete truth, unbearable pain, and absolute conviction. And sometimes that combination is enough to destroy everything. The revelation of Project Gestalt reframes the entire journey. Humanity as it once existed separated body from soul. In an attempt to survive, the Gestalts are the souls, the replicants are the bodies. The shades NieR has been killing are not simply monsters. They are remnants of humanity struggling in a world that has already failed them. NieR does not know this for most of the journey, but the tragedy is that ignorance does not erase consequence. He can be unaware and still be destructive. He can be loving and still be catastrophic. He can be a hero to Yonah and a nightmare to someone else. That is the painful duality at the center of his character. NieR saves people. NieR destroys people. Both are true, and the game does not let one truth cancel out the other. By the time NieR reaches the Shadowlord's castle, his path is already soaked in irreversible choices. He has fought too much, lost too much, and endured too much to turn back now. Even when the truth begins to surface, it cannot compete with the emotional truth that has ruled him since the beginning. Yonah is waiting. That is all that matters. And when he finally confronts the Shadowlord, the fight is not just a final battle. It is a collision between two versions of the same love. Neither side is empty. Neither side is without pain. The Shadowlord is not wrong to love Yonah. NieR is not wrong to love Yonah, but both of them are trapped inside a world that love has been forced into opposition. Only one Yonah can remain. Only one brother can reach her. Only one dream can survive. And the tragedy is that by winning, NieR helps end the last hope for humanity. He gets what he wanted, but the world pays for it. That is the central wound of his story. NieR does not fail because he gives up. He fails because he succeeds. He saves Yonah, but in doing so, he contributes to the collapse of something much larger than himself. And yet, from his perspective, how could he have chosen differently? This is what makes him such a compelling character. He is not a simple cautionary tale about selfishness. He is a portrait of love without perspective, because love by itself is not always enough. Love can protect. Love can heal. Love can give someone the strength to survive, but love can also narrow the world until one person matters. And when that happens, love becomes dangerous. For NieR, Yonah is not simply his sister. She is the center of his identity. Without her, he does not know who he is. Without her, the world has no shape. Without her, there is no future worth imagining. So when he says through his actions that he would sacrifice everything for her, it does not feel like a dramatic exaggeration. It feels like the most honest thing about him. He would. He does. And that is why the title character NieR Replicant is so tragic. Because he is both painfully understandable and morally devastating. We understand why he fights. We understand why he refuses to stop. We understand why Yonah matters more to him than anything. But understanding is not the same as absolution. The people he kills still mattered. The shades still had lives. The world still collapses. And the causes of his love cannot be ignored just because that love was sincere. There is something deeply human about that. Because many people want to believe that if their intentions are pure, then the outcome will somehow be pure too. But NieR Replicant rejects that comfort. NieR's intentions are rooted in love, but the outcome is tragedy, and that is a hard truth. Sometimes people can do terrible harm while believing they are doing the right thing. Sometimes the most destructive choices come from the most intimate emotions. Sometimes the person who would burn the world is not someone who hates the world. Sometimes it is someone who loves one person too much to see anything else. That is NieR. Not a monster, not a saint, a brother, a protector, a weapon shaped by grief. And when I look at his full journey from the young boy caring for Yonah to the adult man storming the Shadowlord's castle, I do not see two separate characters. I see one continuous tragedy. Young NieR is a promise, adult NieR is a consequence. Young NieR shows us the purity of his love, adult NieR shows us what that love becomes when the world keeps taking from him. And that is why both versions matter. If we only look at adult NieR, we see the obsession, the violence, the tunnel vision. But if we remember young NieR, we see where it all came from. We see the boy who just wanted his sister to live. We see the child forced into responsibility too early. We see the beginning of a devotion that at first looked beautiful. And that makes the ending hurt more. Because adult NieR is not a betrayal of young NieR. He is the fulfillment of him. Everything that made NieR admirable also makes him dangerous. His loyalty becomes obsession. His courage becomes recklessness. His love becomes destruction, and his refusal to give up becomes the very reason he cannot see the truth in time. That is the tragedy of NieR. He never stops loving Yonah. He never abandons her. He never chooses himself over her. And in most stories that would make him the hero, but in NieR Replicant it makes him something far more complicated. A hero to one person, a villain to another. A brother who saved his sister, a man who helped doomed humanity. And maybe that is why his story stays with us. Because NieR is not tragic because he lacked love. He is tragic because love was the only language he had left. By the end, NieR does what he set out to do. He reaches Yonah, he defeats the Shadowlord, he brings his sister back. But the victory feels haunted. Because the more we understand the world, the harder it is to celebrate without grief. NieR wins, but the story does not let us forget who lost. And that's the emotional power of NieR Replicant. It takes a simple motivation. We save your sister. And it turns into one of the most devastating character studies in gaming. Because beneath the magic, the shades, the grimoires, and the apocalyptic lore, NieR's story is painfully human. It is about what people would do for family. It is about how grief can harden into purpose. It is about how the world can become invisible when the person you love is suffering right in front of you. And it is about the terrifying truth that love, when stripped of perspective, can become indistinguishable from destruction. NieR is not remembered because he was right. He is remembered because we understand why he could not turn back. He was a boy who wanted to save his sister, became a man who would sacrifice the world, and in the end, that's what makes him unforgettable. Because NieR's story is not simply about saving Yonah. It is about the cost of making one person your entire world. And what happens when the world answers back? If you connected with this, I've set up a small coffee page tied to the channel. No pressure at all. It's just there for anyone who wants to support what I'm building here. And to you beautiful people, this is where I'll leave us off. Stay true to yourselves. Love yourself. It's a hard world out there. And so, until next time, peace.